You can start.
Hey guys, this is Kaylin and Justin with Who Is Like You Ministries, and this is take 2 of the library video because I didn't know some things and said some things wrong, and obviously knew nothing about Justin's books. So now we're doing it again with some flair.
So we figured we'd start this video by in our living room where we have our really cool maps from biblical backgrounds. Here's our dogs. But so this is a map of the Holy Land made by biblical backgrounds, and there's pictures around of me and various places in Israel. Here's the Arbel Cliffs and Sea of Galilee and Samaria, Jerusalem, or I'm on the Mount of Olives in that one, this one. And then here's just a picture of the woman who's suffering a discharge.
So what we're going to do is we're going to have Justin talk about his books because it has been well established that I don't know anything about his books, particularly the grammars. So he'll be able to give you guys way more information, and then I'm going to talk about the ones that I know more about because I'll be able to give you more information about those. So we're going to start off with Justin.
So this is our office. You've seen it before, but it's pretty tiny. So we do what we can to fit all of our bookshelves in here. There's another bookshelf we're going to show you that's in our bedroom, but this is what we can do right now. So on the computer, I have my sermon up that I'm writing for this weekend on Jude, which is a passage that doesn't really get preached on a lot or even has a lot of attention from scholars. So I've got the English, Greek, and Syriac up on the screen over there. But anyway, so the way that we have our bookshelves divided are, this is my books, this shelf is my bookshelf, that one's mine. That one is kind of a mixture, I'd say it's mostly mine. The one on the left, the back left, is hers. That one is hers. This one is hers. And these two are mine. Now this is only a small fraction of the books that we have because most of them we switched to digital a while back. So most of the books are digital, but here's some of our physical ones. And if you notice on the top here, we've got Bibles around all of the flat bookshelves. We've got a nice collection. In here is a 1742 Greek New Testament that we got when we got married. And on top of this are some of my yods when I read the Torah scroll.
I joke that old Bible was Justin's wedding present for me.
Yeah. I haven't gotten it out in a while. So here's the Greek New Testament, 1742, before the founding of our country. And here we go. And it's Textus Receptus, so the manuscript's behind the King James. But yeah, it's just an old...
Isn't there writing in the front?
Yes. I don't know if it's in the front. There are right. Yeah. So here is someone's handwritten notes, whoever owned it. And I looked at these years ago. Here's a later hand in pencil. I used to know what they say, but I haven't looked at them in a while. But yeah. So before I do my first bookshelf, let me show you my desk real quick. Here's some of the stuff I'm working on right now. I'm going through Egyptian, and I'm taking another semester of Syriac, and I'm also going through Davies' his work. But here, this is really cool. So I'm a part of an organization called Biblical Backgrounds, where we make Bible maps like the one that you saw out in the living room. And here's a lot of our work that we do here, and then those are just some papers and books that I'm currently using for things.
This is... I love how I spoke to you guys, and I put the mic by the thing. That blue thing right there, blue-gray thing, is a book stamp that I got for Justin for Christmas last year. Yeah. So we could stamp all of his books.
Last year for Christmas, we wanted to get each other really cool things, and we ended up getting each other 2 of the same thing. Like, she got me this Humble Lamb New American Standard Bible,
which you guys have seen me talk about mine.
And I got her the same exact one, but in yellow. for Christmas last year. And then she got me this book stamp, and I also got her one, unbeknownst to each other. So this is a knickknack I got, or a goblet I got in Bethlehem when I was in Israel a couple of years ago, made from olive wood. Here is a piece of Byzantine pottery I got on the shores of where was it? Ashkelon, on the beach, on the shores of Ashkelon near the Mediterranean. Byzantine era, so 4th, 5th century. Here is a stone that I got from the Ederet Brook near the Elah Valley in Israel. Now, if those names sound familiar, it's because this is where David and Goliath fought each other. And this is a rock from the actual brook that David, in 1 Samuel, got his rocks that he killed Goliath. And so what's interesting is where a lot of the tourists go in Israel, where a lot of the tourists are taken, is actually the wrong brook. The correct one, judging by geographical and textual evidence, is the one where I got this rock from. This is a lamassu, which is an ancient Near Eastern protective deity that you would normally see guarding the throne rooms of the kings. Kaylin got me this one from the British Museum in London when she was doing work in Cambridge. Here is a small jar from Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And this is a jar that's similar in size to what a lot of the jars would have looked like. This is a spear tip from Africa. This is a cuneiform tablet that I made when I was doing a project on an Ugaritic tablet called the Betrothal of Yarik and Nikal Wa'ib. This is what their language looks like and what the tablet would have looked like that I was working off of. And then finally, my uncle was in the military, and this is some military stuff for him. So, all right. So you can see on our top shelf, we've got a lot of Bibles. Here on this shelf is really nice because I've got the Zondervan Pictorial Encyclopedia of the Bible. It's a set from the 70s, so a lot of the stuff is outdated, but it still has really good information from scholars like Kenneth Kitchen and others. And this is actually a set from one of my professors, Lawson Younger, who, when he was retiring, a lot of his books he gave away, and I was able to grab that. Here's just some scribal culture stuff from Deaver and that Davies book I showed you. And then here's just some overall Israel and Jewish history books. On this shelf is my Hebrew Bible shelf, where I've got various editions of BHS, the Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia, which is the standard Hebrew Bible. Right here, I've got a reader's version of that. I've actually got two. That's why there's a space. The other one's in the bedroom. This is an 1800s Hebrew Bible. Here is a Zondervan reader's Hebrew and Greek Bible. So it's got the BHS and the NA28 texts. Over here is just another reader's one. And then here are two of my Art Scroll published Bibles. This one is an interlinear Chumash, so it just has the Torah, the first five books of the Bible, and this one's got the whole thing with commentary from rabbis like Rashi and others. Here's Robert Alter's translation of the Torah. One of my professors calls Robert Alter one of probably the greatest Hebraist of our time. And then here's a Masorah of the Hebrew Bible. So if you want to read the little marks next to the text of the Hebrew Bible, then that's a book that's really useful for that. So this shelf is going to have a lot of my language stuff. On this shelf, we've got the various languages that I work in. Here's some Biblical Hebrew. Here's a Phoenician grammar. Syriac. Syriac is the language of the Eastern Church. Got some Biblical Aramaic, some Arabic here. Ugaritic, which Ugaritic is one of my favorite languages. I've done a lot of work in that. A lot of Ugaritic textbooks. And then Sumerian. One of my professors, Richard Averbeck, who I'll show you a book from him in a minute, he's a specialist in Sumerian. Down here is just my Hebrew grammar shelf. I've got and then I got two Bibles here. This is another of my Hebrew Bibles. So this is a standard work in biblical grammar and syntax studies, Walt Keane O'Connor's. And then my favorite of the Hebrew grammars is right here, Kutz and Josberger's Learning Biblical Hebrew. This is the best one, I think. And then I've got some other stuff, such as Gesenius, which is a staple in grammars, and also stuff on verbs and whatnot in various grammars. The one I learned on is actually the previous edition of this one, but this one's much better. And then down here, this finishes my grammars, my language stuff, but also has my map stuff that I do a lot of work in. Over here, we've got my Akkadian. Reichel Borger's his work here, 3 volumes, bound 1, is invaluable. And then here's Hunegard's Akkadian grammar, and then Egyptian over here. You saw my other Egyptian textbook up there. But so here, we've got a lot of my atlases, which I'm a big maps guy since I work for biblical backgrounds now. So this one right here, they're in their 2nd edition now, which I have digitally, but this is their 1st edition. This is my favorite atlas that we've got by Anson Rainey and Stephen Notley. Anson Rainey, he died a while back, but I was able to meet Stephen Notley at SBL last year, the Society of Biblical Literature Conference. This is by far the best atlas out there, but it's very in-depth, very intense. So if you get this, which I would recommend, just be ready, because it's very intense with textual studies. The IVP one's good as well. I don't know where, right here, the Moody Atlas one by Barry Beitzel is really good. He was a professor at Trinity, where I got my master's from. So then we go over here. We've got, this is really my Ancient Near East shelf. But a lot of stuff has crossover because we just don't have room for everything to be on an individual shelf, or not enough room for things to take up a whole shelf. So up here, we've got the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. I've used this a lot. Honestly, I prefer the Zondervan one, but I got this from one of my professors when he was leaving his office and when we were moving here to Ohio. I got this whole set. Up here are some standard Old Testament theologies. I've got some other ones down there. But Von Rod and Eichrodt are both standard in this. This is a book written by my professor and mentor, Richard Averbeck. This is an invaluable book for how the law in the Old Testament relates to modern day Christians. He and I I've had the pleasure of learning Akkadian from him and Ugaritic, and we've also been to Israel together for a couple of weeks. Up here, I've got some of my Jewish-themed books, like To Be a Jew, Rabbi Chaim and Halevi Donin. This book is really nice because it's a very great guide to synagogue observances. And so it's very helpful, whether you're Christian or Jewish or neither. It's just very helpful to know. And then I do a lot of work in Jewish apologetics. So Asher Norman's book on 26 Reasons Why Jews Don't Believe in Jesus is really nice, and I've interacted with this book a lot, especially when I was doing some writing on Isaiah 53. So down here in this shelf, we've got some of my Assyrian, Egyptian, and some other hodgepodge of things. So Israel and Egypt. Right here, James Hoffmeyer, who's a renowned Egyptologist. He's working in Nubia now instead of Egypt, which is modern-day Sudan. The Nubians, or Cush, as it's called in the Bible. But this, he's working on his 2nd edition right now. He also taught at Trinity. Well, I think he finished his 2nd edition, and he's trying to find a publisher for it. But this is one of the best books you could ever get for stuff on the Exodus account from an Egyptologist, a believing Egyptologist. This book, written by one of my professors, Michelle Knight, one of my Old Testament professors, her dissertation at Wheaton College was on the Song of Deborah in Judges 4, and 5. So 4 is the narrative account, 5 is the poetic retelling of it. And I got her to sign it for me. And she was, and the cover of this is really cool too.
It's got that kind of matte.
It's like a woodblock kind of look.
Yeah.
Anyway, it seemed like she felt really humbled, not humbled, like really, she just really enjoyed when I asked her to sign it, because I think that might have been the first book she's ever gotten to sign for somebody.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of, like, professors, they don't really get asked a lot to sign their books.
Before the Muses, Benjamin Foster, I used this book a fair amount when I was working on my thesis, which is on the next shelf. No, 2 shelves down. But he's got a lot of great Akkadian texts in there that are very useful for comparative work. And then Religion in Ancient Egypt is pretty good by Byron Schaeffer. If you want to learn about the Egyptian religion, that's not bad. And then I've got some other stuff. This book is really great. Do Historical Matters Matter to Faith? Written by, or edited by, James Hoffmeyer, the same one who did the Egypt book, and my other professor, Dennis McGarry, who is the Hebrew guru. You'll never find anyone in the world who knows more about Hebrew than him. At the school, we used to call him the Masorete. The Masoretes were the ones who preserved the Hebrew Bible. And so it's the foreword's written by John Woodbridge, who is one of mine and Kaylynn's professors of church history. This book answers a lot of questions about how believing scholars, how they answer modern critical biblical scholarship. So this is an invaluable resource. And a number of my other professors have chapters in this book. I think Richard Averbeck wrote one on Leviticus, on Exodus or Leviticus in here. And my mentor, John Monson, who does the map work with me, he's got a Joshua chapter in there. But they've got stuff for Old Testament and New Testament, and then theology and all kinds of things in there. So I would strongly recommend it. So let's go down another shelf. Sassen's 4 volumes on civilizations of the ancient Near East is another invaluable resource for just a survey of anything ancient Near East, which the Bible is a part of. Liverani's textbook on the ancient Near East, you could see I've done a lot of marking in this book. It's one of my favorites. Back to School in Babylonia is one that I got at ASOR a couple years ago. I haven't had a chance to work through it yet. The thing when you continue with school, you don't get to read the books that you have because you have to keep adding new books for classes, so I'm working on it. But this will be scribal culture in Babylonia. And then, let's see. I got books on Hebrew orthography over here. I should actually put that over there on the Hebrew shelf. And then Warfare in the Old Testament. Here's some more Old Testament theologies by Walter Kaiser, who is also a Trinity professor. But anyone who's ever been a part of Christian scholarship or preaching or whatever went to Trinity or taught at Trinity. So I would definitely recommend it. I'm pro seminary, pro school, so definitely go to these types of schools, or Dallas or Denver. Work from these mature Christians, these people who have done the work. It's invaluable to learn from them.
Also keep in mind, if you don't want to get a full degree, the vast majority of these seminaries will do certificate programs where you can take 4 or 5 classes and get a certificate, like in theology or church history, Old Testament, languages. I know that's something that Trinity is leaning pretty heavily into right now. So if you guys... The mic was over there the entire time. Hopefully you heard everything that I just said. If you didn't hear everything that I just said,
we can bump it up.
This will be edited out.
No, we can bump up.
We'll bump it up, Justin says. But and you could also, if you don't want to do a certificate, you really don't want to pay the money, or you can't pay the money, which is completely understandable, just pop in to one of these professors' offices that you're really interested in taking their classes, and just take a leap and say, hey, I'm really interested in this subject, but I'm not really ready to commit. Would you mind if I just sat in on your class? It's ultimately up to that professor. A lot of them will say yes and be enthusiastic about you being there. So that's just a little tidbit, little side note from us about going to school.
while she was just talking, I was looking at this shelf, and there's one book I wanted to mention that I missed on this top shelf here. The Limits of Orthodox Theology. As you can see, I've worked through this one a lot as well. So Rabbinic Judaism owes a lot of their views to Maimonides, Moses Maimonides, who was a Middle Ages rabbi from Spain. And a lot of his views are the standard right now. But what this view shows, or this book shows, is that during Maimonides' time and a little bit after, the rabbis weren't all in agreement with Maimonides' 13 principles. So this is really nice to see how he hasn't always been the standard, even by other rabbis. So down here, this is a lot of my general ancient Near East texts. Kaylin's going to talk a lot about primers. These are my ancient Near East primers. This 4-volume set I want to take a second and talk about. The Context of Scripture by William Hallow from Yale and Lawson Younger from Trinity. Like I said, Lawson Younger is one of my professors I've taken 7, 8, 9 classes with him. He was one of my original Hebrew professors. He's the biggest scholar, like the greatest scholar, one of the greatest. Anyway, so he's got a lot. They've edited this volume with a lot of texts from the Hittites or Canaan or Akkadian texts or Egyptian texts or tons of texts that relate. They don't all relate specifically to the Bible, but just going through a lot of these stories and these accounts and whatnot, you learn a lot about how the ancient Near East works and how people thought. I went through all 4 of these volumes, read them cover to cover for my thesis that I did, which touched on a lot of the stuff mentioned in here. Another one I want to mention is Pritchard's Annett, the Ancient Near East, an anthology of texts. This was the standard before Hallow and Younger's Context of Scripture. So if you don't want 4 volumes, this one is very good as well. It's got a lot of the same texts, but this one is better. Hallow and Younger is better. And actually these ones, published by Brill, and if you know anything about book publishers, Brill is one of the most expensive publishers.
I'm going to talk about that as well with a couple of publishers for my books.
And so Brill charges like baseline $100 per book. This one, there was a special deal that my professor, Dr. Younger, had my first semester at Trinity. And so they were like half off, plus this one was half off as well, which I'll talk about in a second. So I got all of these books for like $100, $150, $200, and they were freshly printed and bound on order. So I got these hot off the press, literally. Another one I want to mention is, I wish I had it physically. I mean, this one's not bad. This one by Jeremy Black and Anthony Green. Just a list of the various deities in Mesopotamia. This is really good if you're doing work in that area. So this Dictionary of Deities and Demons in the Bible is a really good book that talks about all the different gods and goddesses and religious things that you encounter in the Bible, Old and New Testaments. So it's really nice. This is my thesis that I wrote on ancient Near Eastern polemics. I say anti-God polemics.
Tell them how long it is, Justin.
So this is a master's thesis that's 267 pages.
Do you guys want to guess how long a master's thesis should be? Do you want to tell them that too?
Around 80 to 120.
Which is where mine was. So I hit the mark, and Justin's like, you know what? I'm just going to stomp all that enthusiasm into the ground.
Yeah. Jack Sasson, I mentioned him a second ago with the Ancient Near East volumes. His work in the Mari archives, which is such an important place for the history of the ancient Near East. The Mari was an ancient kingdom, and they spoke in Akkadian, and their most famous king was Zimri Lim. Anyway, this is a book of texts found at Mari that are invaluable for studying the Old Testament and the ancient Near East as a whole. And then I've got some other stuff by John Walton. He does a lot of this comparative work for general audiences. And then on this bottom shelf is my archaeology shelf. John Monson gave me these 4 volumes, the Encyclopedia of Archaeological Excavations in the Holy Land. Very great. And then I've got just some dictionaries and handbooks of archaeology things, like Amihai Mazar, his archaeology book is really good. And then Aharoni's is good. And here's one from Ebla. Ebla is another big find in archaeology. They had an archive there that was discovered. So yeah, that's that shelf. And then I've got some here. What's here? Yeah, just some more archaeology books on top. Okay, now let's do this shelf. So this is my Old Testament commentary, Messianic Jewish shelf, and just some other things that we can fit. Old Testament surveys. So up here we've got a lot of Messianic Jewish stuff. That means believing Jews, Jews that believe in Jesus. Technically, they're Christians, and by Christian meaning follower of Jesus, but they prefer to use the term Messianic Jewish because it doesn't come with a lot of the baggage that the term Christian has come with for Jews over the many centuries. Anyway, a lot of good stuff here. Let's see, was it this one? No. I don't know where it's at. When we come across it, I'll mention it. Okay, so Rabbi Tovia Singer, his Let's Get Biblical he's a counter missionary is what he calls himself. So he argues a lot against Christians. So having his work is really nice. David Rudolph, who was one of my professors in my undergrad at the King's University, he is a big scholar, Messianic Jewish scholar, and his work on Paul in 1 Corinthians is really amazing. Also, historically, there's a book called Faith Strengthened by Moses Makata, or translated by him. So this is a book from the Middle Ages, and it's another one of those where it's a Jewish rabbi who's arguing against Christianity. So and then this right here, the Gospel according to Isaiah 53, is very invaluable. Daryl Bach and Mitch Glazer. Mitch Glazer is the head of Chosen People Ministries. But the best part about this book is a chapter. It's got a lot of good chapters on Isaiah 53, but by far the best one comes at the very beginning with Richard Averbeck, my professor. He does some very good work in talking about the asham in Isaiah 53. Asham is the Hebrew word for a guilt offering. Anyway, so on this shelf we start some of the commentaries. Now a lot of my commentaries I have digitally, but we're starting to get them more physically because it just looks good to have a bookshelf with all these. Now, one thing that you need to know with commentaries, which you don't hear this as much as you should, especially from a lot of these YouTubers that have just commentaries and commentaries of the whole set for the Word Biblical Commentary, the whole set for the New International Application Commentary, or whatever. That's fine, but what you want to do with commentaries is get the specific books. The Bible book that you're studying, you want to get because of the author that wrote it, not because it's in a certain series. So typically you don't want to have the entire set. I mean, it looks good because they all match, but you want to get the commentary tailored toward the author who wrote it. And so that's why I've got a lot of mismatch here. So Daniel Block from Wheaton University has a really good judge's commentary. He interacts a lot. Well, I'm not going to say that. I won't say that. Oh, this is the one I was looking for, right here. This book is incredible for the Jewish believers who were still around in the early, and their influence in the early years of the church. Love this book. Okay. So, back on the commentaries. So a lot of these I've got because my professors wrote them or I've worked in them in classes. So this commentary on Hosea that came out recently by my Syriac professor, Eric Tully. So this is a pretty good commentary. He does a lot. He He went to UW-Madison, and his specialty is Syriac, which is another Semitic language. And then Cook on the Aramaic parts, Aramaic parts of Ezra and Daniel is really invaluable, because not the whole Old Testament wasn't just written in Hebrew. There's Aramaic parts too, and you have to learn the Aramaic grammar and different things to get to those. E.A. Spizer's work on Genesis is pretty good. He's a renowned archaeologist who headed the Baghdad School in the 30s and 40s, I think, for the American Schools of Oriental Research. Here's another work from Dr. Tully on reading the prophets, which is really nice. And this from Baker, really well done. And it's a lot of work went into this book. It's got really nice glossy pages, and the cover looks good. So Klaus Westermann is a big-time scholar, and his stuff on Isaiah is worth reading, even if you don't agree with everything. Here's another Jack Sasson on Jonah that I've gone through pretty heavily. He's a pretty good scholar, and so his work on Jonah is good. I really like this one. This is Rashi's commentary on Esther, the book of Esther. Rashi was a Middle Ages rabbi as well, so Maimonides is known as the greatest scholar of Judaism. Rashi is known as the greatest teacher. He was a French Jew. And so his insights into this are really interesting. And then Reverend Childs, his book of Exodus commentary is good. Childs is a big name in Old Testament scholarship. Here we've got some more just Old Testament surveys down there. This one is kind of a hodgepodge. I've got a concordance here for Hebrew. I've got the Kabbalistic commentary set for the Torah, Genesis. These are out of order. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And then here's just two really good dictionaries on early Judaism. And this one's on, I think this one is the entirety of Israelite history. And then here are just some Old Testament surveys. I'm a big fan of Old Testament surveys. I love them. So I've taught out of this one. This one's okay, but I have taught out of it at DePaul University when I did a course there on ancient Israel. I got this one at SBL last year. I haven't had a chance to go through it fully, but it's pretty good. And then Gleason Archer, his work, Survey of Old Testament. Another Trinity professor. He's incredible scholar. He's been dead for a while, but incredible scholar. Okay, so I've got one more bookshelf, but first, since we're making our way around the room, I'll do that when we get over there. So now let's switch over and look at Kaylin's shelves.
Okay, that could not have come soon enough because I lost the feeling in my left arm. So, everybody who watches stuff on YouTube, if they have a camera person, say a prayer for the camera person. As you guys know, I struggle with the mic placement. So hopefully you're able to hear me. Justin tells me that sometimes the volume is really low. So I don't know if it's that I just don't speak loud enough in general or what the deal is. But okay, so start up here. So as you guys notice, Justin is primarily a languages, Old Testament, ancient Near East scholar, whereas I am more of a church history. I lean pretty heavy on modern church history, but I delve more into theology and church history. So you'll notice too, we have super random objects on our shelves. This is my pocket knife.
Tell them how you got that.
So what do you mean how I got it?
Look, it's got your name.
Oh yeah, it does have my maiden name. So it has my first name, Kaylin, and then my maiden name, Swindle, on the other side. I don't know why when I got it, when Justin and I first started dating, I thought it was cool that my name would be on it. But it's Benchmade. Side note, if you like pocket knives or if you're a knife person, Benchmade is a great brand. Justin has a Benchmade knife. So a little thing for Benchmade, but pocket knife. We get books in boxes delivered and stuff like that, so that's probably why that's there. This, if we're talking about knickknacks, this is a little, I don't know what these types of things are called, frosted glass. This is a frosted glass depiction of some famous buildings in Cambridge. Like you have King's Chapel, you've got St. John's College, the Bridge of Sighs, the Mathematical Bridge, the Round Church in there. I've been to every single place. When I did a summer research trip to Cambridge last summer, I've been to all of these places. So I wanted something that would capture the time that I was there. So this was a cool little knickknack to take. This is just a giant pencil that Justin's brother Brandon got for me. I'm about to start teaching as a youth director at a church, and I just know that the kids are going to love this, so the giant pencil is going to get moved. So it's top shelf here. This is going to have, some of my shelves are organized like Justin, some of them are just kind of like a hodgepodge. The highlights on this shelf, so An Introduction to Christianity, Linda Woodhead. This is a good church history survey. Justin likes Old Testament surveys. I like church history surveys. This is a nice, kind of more concise church history survey. This is going to talk about theology some as well. It's published by Cambridge. Extraordinary Women of Christian History, Ruth Tucker. Ruth Tucker is a fantastic historian. She writes a lot about women in the church. I taught out of this for a class at a church that we went to when we were in Chicago. This has a list of really famous women in Christian history like Harriet Tubman, Perpetua, Corrie ten Boom. So this is a really great survey of really influential and important women in church history. I think it's angled. Okay, so this book is interesting. So this is not church history, but it's The Dual Mandate in British Tropical Africa by Frederick Lugard, who was a person in the British military during the colonization and imperialization of, what is it? I forget every time. Nigeria, I'm sorry. So this is a book that he wrote about the British influence and basically how to rule African people. Now you guys are probably like, Kaylin, what would prompt you to own such a book? I wrote a paper on social Darwinism in Africa for my class at TEDS called Christianity in the Non-Western World. So Frederick Lugard was pretty influential in that movement. So I wanted to read the book that he wrote. Essentially, this is a love letter to social Darwinism, in my opinion. Dr. Ott may disagree, but this was a really interesting thing to add to the collection here. We've got some C.S. Lewis right here. Got some C.S. Lewis right here. This is just a collection of stories, and this is specifically the Screw Tape Letters. If you've never read C.S. Lewis, pick any book. Literally anything that he's written, and you'll have a good time. How Christianity Changed the World. I read this for, I want to say when I was attending TKU, and it's just kind of about the Christian influence that's present in a lot of modern government. And we've also just got some philosophy, various other Christian history up here as well. Moving to this shelf, we've got the start. Well, these are the last 3 volumes, but these Calvin Tracts and Letters are kind of scattered throughout my shelves on this particular case. So these are just going to be exactly what it sounds like, tracts and letters. So these are Calvin's thoughts. I've used these for some references to Calvin theology, which are present in these books. This is a survey on the Reformation. I used it a little bit for a paper that I had written. There are better books on the Reformation, in my opinion, but McCullough does a decent job of capturing the essence of the Reformation here. We've got Justo Gonzalez's Christianity in Latin America. I would argue that Gonzalez is one of the best church historians that is widely published. I used his surveys, which we'll talk about. Actually, since they're not on the main shelf, I'll talk about it right here. This is volume 1. This is a 2-volume set of The Story of Christianity by Gonzalez. Much like Justin's book that he was talking about over there, this is pretty heavily tabbed because this and the 2nd volume, along with Bruce Shelley's survey, are what I use to study for my comprehensive exams. So if you want a nice, I'm actually reviewing it again right now for a class I'm going to be teaching. So if you want a really good, very detailed, but extremely easy to read survey on church history, Gonzalez is a great recommendation for that. We've got a Catholic Church Catechism here. Catechisms are good to have. If you're not sure what a catechism is, it's a question and answer format of kind of how to understand your belief system. So, for example, if you wanted to know about, you know, morality and human rights, you would say, like, the question may be like, you know, what does it mean to be a moral Christian? And then the catechism would go into different details, citing scripture, maybe some different church fathers. A Catholic one may cite some doctrines, some saints to answer that question. This is the first of many primers that I have. This is published by Routledge. Routledge is an extremely expensive publisher, just like Brill. Everything that I've ever gotten from Routledge is really, really high. I think this book was $75, which is insane, but I had to have it for a class. So this is a history of the church in the Middle Ages. So this is going to be a primer. So this is going to have different sections from primary writings during a particular time in history, whether it's the ancient Near East, Middle Ages, Reformation, what have you. Typically, there will be a brief explanation of the time period or the person or the particular work that they're pulling a section from in a primer. But primers are really great, especially if you're in school, because it'll give you an idea of what was written, and then you can kind of narrow down and try to locate the entirety of that particular primary source. So primers are really great to have on your shelf. I have quite a few. We've got Christianity and Western Thought here, How the West Won, similar to How Christianity Changed the World, but with more focus on the West. This is another primer that is published by Erdman's, History of Christianity in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, a documentary source book, fancy name for a primer. Same idea. You're going to have different sources from Latin America, from Asia, that will give you a primary source, a section of that to read, to give you an idea of what was written and what was circulating at the time. Moving down to this third shelf here, this pencil is just going to travel. We're going to move it until we no longer need it. Moving to this next shelf, what I think is going to be funny, you guys, is that Justin is very tall and I'm quite short, which it means the lower we get to the ground, the more difficult it's going to be for Justin to follow. This is where we're going to move into like the science and religion evolution conversation. I wrote my thesis on the evolution debate and anti-evolution law in Arkansas in the early 1920s. So I have a lot of things related to that question or related to that topic, which will start here. So we have a couple, I should say a few books on religious history in America. We have American Religious History by Kidd. This is a really, really good book. I would recommend this probably over the Gustad and Schmidt as well as the Butler. I'd recommend this one over those. The America on Trial, this, I have this because it talks about the Scopes trial, which was a focal point of my thesis. I wouldn't necessarily say that you need this in your theological library, but it was useful to me, and he gives some really great legal insight on the Scopes trial. Now, this is one of the 3 copies of, I think we have 3 or 4, of Darwin's Origin of Species. As you can imagine, since I'm a big science and religion person, I have to have Darwin. This is I don't think this is a facsimile. I have a facsimile somewhere. It might be on another shelf, which we'll talk about what a facsimile is. But this book is cool because it's got a really great cover, but it's also got some fantastic illustrations. Let me find, like, we've got some photos of Darwin. The way it's done is just really well. Got some great illustrations. The way it's thrown about is really good. So this was cool. I think we found this at Half Price Books. But this is like a special edition of Origins that we picked up. One of the more artistic ones that we have here. So I showed you guys the Frederick Lugard book up there. This is what prompted me to write that paper on social Darwinism in Nigeria. This is by Olufemi Oluniyi. He passed a couple of years ago, a Nigerian preacher and historian out of Nigeria. And he wrote a book, Darwin Comes to Africa, about social Darwinism and British imperialism. He did a fantastic job of painting this picture of how social Darwinism influenced British imperialism in Nigeria. He has a great, an extensive section of endnotes here that I referenced pretty heavily when I was writing my paper. This is published by the Center for Science and Culture out of the Discovery Institute. This is just a great book. You probably didn't know this about Nigeria. So I think everybody should read this book. It's also applicable for just British imperialism in Africa in general. So that one's great. Science and the Doctrine of Creation. This came about from a conference that was held at Trinity in the early to mid 2000s, I believe. So you've got Kevin Van Hooser in here. You've got John Woodbridge in here. You've got quite a few different contributors from TEDS, but just centered around this conversation of science's place in religion and religion's place in science. They have some reflections on B.B. Warfield in here, Karl Barth. So you've got a lot of good information. I have 2 copies of these, I think, because Dr. Gunlock gave us a copy when we were taking his class. This is a good resource to have, and I wish I would have been there during that conference. More books on Christianity in America. Return of the God Hypothesis by Stephen Meyer is really good if you're wanting to talk about intelligent design. These are really interesting. And then he also wrote Darwin's Doubt here. And then in a boss move, a book talking about the the heavy critiques and disagreements with Darwin's Doubt. So he posted a whole book responding to those. Two books that I think you should read if you are interested in this debate by the opposition. You should always read the works of those you disagree with, because the only way for you to fully understand why you disagree with them, assuming you do, is to understand why they believe what they believe and what evidence they have to back that up. So a good example of this is Jared Diamond's The Third Chimpanzee and Stephen Jay Gould's The Panda's Thumb. They both were... I know Stephen Jay Gould passed. I don't know about Jared Diamond off the top of my head, but they are great books talking about pro-evolution, how humans descended from apes. You should be familiar, if you are anti-evolution in any scope, you should be familiar with their work, particularly The Panda's Thumb. That's probably one of the more famous of those 2 works. And then I have a survey on evolution that I had to read for my time at Biola. We have got, in this next shelf, more tracts and letters from Calvin. Corrie ten Boom's The Hiding Place. Her family hid Jews in World War II, and she was imprisoned for it. This is her account of hiding Jews and also her account of being in prison. If you're a Christian, you've probably read this book. If you're a World War II buff, you've probably read this book. But this is a fantastic story, very moving. Highly recommend it. I read it for a class I was teaching. This is a good one. Hermeneutics, Authority, and Canon. This is by D.A. Carson and John Woodbridge. John Woodbridge was my mentor at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School. He was also the first reader of my thesis. He is arguably the smartest man I have ever met. He probably knows everything. and is like in his late 80s and still going around and teaching and doing all kinds of things. He's a fantastic writer. But he contributes to a lot of books. He doesn't really publish a lot on his own, but he contributes a lot. So this is a really great book on biblical authority and hermeneutics. In that same vein, we've got 5 views on biblical inerrancy. I'm a big proponent of biblical inspiration and biblical inerrancy. We have quite a few of these 5 views, 4 views, 3 views books out of the Zondervan series. But Dr. Van Hooser from TEDS contributed to this. I think you should read these, mostly because it gives you a nice sky view of the argument from all sides. Let's see.
What about your heresy book?
I haven't read this one yet. This one I got when we went to SBL last year, Heresy in the Middle Ages by Andrea Janelle Dickens. I've heard good things. I just haven't gotten a chance to read it yet. Like Justin said, when you're in school, you have to read things very quickly or skim things, and so you don't really get an opportunity that often to read books that interest you. So this is on the list to read, but I've heard good things. I'm a big person on heresy, not encouraging heresy, but I find heresies interesting. I wrote a paper for one of my classes talking about how difficult it is to define what a heresy is. So I've spent a lot of time in that. Down here, we've got some Reformation stuff. So we've got Calvin, Luther, and Zwingli.
That specific Luther book I got a while back because I was writing something on his later views of Jewish people. So that one is the one that contains the famous On the Jews and Their Lies.
Is it this one?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, he went a little crazy there at the end. So Dr. Scott Manich out of TEDS would say, do you guys hear a little Weezer back there? That's our dog Nuna. She has an allergy that comes up every now and then that makes her cough, and so we've given her the rap name Lil Weezer. Dr. Manich would say that there is no perfect Christian, which I think we'd all agree. He calls them sinner saints, people who do or say awful things that God ultimately uses for his glory. And Luther, I think, particularly at the end of his life, would be one of those. But Zwingli, Ulrich Zwingli, he was a Reformation father out of Switzerland, I believe. Yes, I think it is Switzerland. But I wonder how many people have heard of him. You've all heard of John Calvin. You all heard of Martin Luther. How many of you have heard of him? He actually died in battle defending Reformation views, and he was dismembered after he died. I don't know if you guys wanted or needed to know that, but you do now. But Bruce Gordon is a huge Zwingli scholar. He's a fantastic historian. This book is extremely well written. I wrote a review of this book, and I really enjoyed it. So I recommend reading this. We've got the Confessions of St. Augustine of Hippo. Augustine is one of my favorite church fathers. Now, he was anti-woman. Just going to say that right from the jump. He did not like the ladies because he liked the ladies too much. But what I like about his Confessions, I think everybody should read his Confessions. What I like about it is he does not tiptoe around this idea of sinful temptation. He is very open about it. He is sorrowful about it. He talks a lot, actually, too, about the fears he has of leading a congregation, how he feels very responsible for the people that he ministers to. This is a very fancy edition that we picked up, I want to say, at Half Price Books as well. But you can find his Confessions just about anywhere. You do not have to pick up a fancy copy, but you should read it. I've got more Augustine here, some other church fathers, Gregory of Nyssa. We've got some more Augustine here. These 2 volumes on Thomas Aquinas, they have his primary writings. So these you would consider these primers as well. Well, I don't know if you consider these primers because they have the entirety of those particular writings that these volumes hold. I use these all the time because I reference Aquinas in almost every paper that I've written related to church history, because he is such a huge part of why we believe what we believe and why we practice the way we practice in particular. I used these volumes pretty heavily when I was writing a paper on whether or not theology could be considered a science. He actually addresses this directly in his Summa contra Gentiles. Down here, these are Justin's, which he pointed out are not in the right place when we were about to film this. So these are facsimiles of
various New Testament papyri.
Yeah, that. So these were, if you guys are familiar with Daniel Wallace and his organization, they print these and sell these. So Justin got these for his birthday last year from his loving wife. More tracts and letters from Calvin. We've got the first 2 volumes of the Fundamentals here. This is our dog Bew. He's a good boy. He's a good boy. He likes to be involved. We'll just leave him there. These are done by R.A. Torrey. These were printed in the early 20th century. If you guys have ever heard of like the 5 fundamentals of Christianity, that's essentially what these are. I have the first 2 volumes of that. These we were in a donation bin at the library. Unfortunately, they did not have the other volumes, which is quite sad. We've got some Vatican II documents down here, so that would be a primer. This one's pretty cool. I came across this one. I don't remember where we got it, but it's got illuminated manuscripts from the medieval period. So it's got really cool, if you will let you see, really cool pictures of illuminated manuscripts and different books from the Middle Ages. Illuminated just means colorful, essentially. So, really cool thing to have in the collection here. We've got George Whitefield, Erasmus, and then we've got another primer of medieval theologians published by Blackwell, edited by G.R. Evans, fantastic historian and theologian. But this is another primer on theologians from the medieval period. I have sat down, and it is now difficult.
Just start at the bottom of that
Get
shelf.
back up.
Since you're already down, just stay down.
Okay. So down here, this is kind of, a lot of these are Justin's books. I don't really know how they ended up over here, so I don't know what a lot of these are.
Yeah, none of those are super noteworthy that I'd like to talk about. I mean, you've got Michael Heiser's volumes over there, but none of these are anything that I'd super noteworthy right now.
Okay, so this is a copy of Frankenstein, because I'm writing an article on the creation story in Frankenstein. These are pretty cool. These are noteworthy. So these we bought in Hawaii. We went to a used bookstore and found these. So this is from Darwin's Voyage on the Beagle. And these are the mammal fossils. They have, it's a facsimile. So a facsimile means that it is directly copied from the original, like photocopied from the original. But what's really cool about these are these illustrations that are in the originals. Isn't that cool? And they've got, so this is the fossil mammal one. Oh gosh. Let me pick, they've got a reptile one, which might have some cool, yeah, so we've got some frog illustrations back here, lizard illustrations. So it's the notes of the scientists that were on the Beagle voyage and all of their illustrations.
Not just Darwin?
The Darwin doesn't contribute to any of these.
Oh.
These are just the other scientists that were on the Beagle. I don't know if this one has any. Oh, it does. Look at that. Like a muskrat. And then you've got foxes, lemurs. So yeah, these were cool. This was a cool find. And since I study science and religion, these have to stay in my collection. Justin doesn't get to have them. We've got Shedd's Dogmatic Theology. I'm not a fan of Shedd. If you are a fan of Shedd, you are a different caliber of person. But I'm not a huge fan, but I had to read it for a class that I was taking at Biola, so I do have it. Really like Grudem. I think Grudem is the everyman's theologian when it comes to a systematic theology survey. If you've gone to seminary, you've probably read Grudem. So we have this here. This is his first volume. There is an updated volume, but we only have that digitally. Let's see here. Not really any other notable books on this shelf. Up here, we've got a Nintendo 3DS XL. Spurgeon's sermons. I don't know where we got these. I don't remember where we got these.
We ordered them years ago. You can see these in the background of a lot of videos of pastors and YouTubers because they're just so famous.
They are famous. And he has some great sermons in there. So, these are good references. These are Charles Hodge's 3-volume set on systematic theology. He has them broken down by theology, anthropology, and soteriology. I've referenced these in several papers. I really like Charles Hodge. I referenced him pretty heavily for that paper I talked to you about defining theology as a science. He also talks about this in volume 1. So these are awesome to have. These are Calvin's commentaries on the Gospels. Really interesting. Women of the Bible by Dean. We've got primers in here for philosophy. Oh, moving up. I wonder if you guys heard my knees pop when I got up. So we've got Burkhoff's systematic theology. Burkhoff, he's okay. It's fine. But another survey of systematic theology. Let's see. This is edited by Roland Bainton, but this is a biography on Martin Luther, which is good to have. Dr. Manich actually recommended that one. We've got more of those views on different things. So church and politics, millennium and beyond. We've got several of these kind of scattered throughout the library. We grab them when we see them because, like I said, it gives you a nice high-level view of the topic that they're talking about. Going up here, we've got another primer. This is a Reformation primer edited by Jans. Jans is pretty big in the church history field. But this is going to have Luther, Calvin, Zwingli, different things happening in the Reformation.
And the one thing to always remember when you're doing any kind of study, especially of the Bible and church history, is don't just settle for books that people have written about things. Go to the documents themselves.
Right.
Read Luther's words, or read Augustine's words, or read the ancient Near Eastern texts themselves. Don't just rely on what people say about them.
And also something to think about too is if Van Hooser or whoever is able to write on these primary texts, more than likely you can find them in some form or fashion. So you can find them in a primer. You can also probably just find them online where you can read them in their entirety. So these kinds of things are not as hard to find as people like to make you think that they are. This is a collection of writings by Martin Luther. Kevin Van Hooser, Mere Christian Hermeneutics. I've looked at this for a few things. I haven't read it in its entirety, but he is quite published. He has several different books. We've got some D.A. Carson here. This, as you guys might remember, I picked this up at that Lifeway conference. David Dockery and his son Ben Dockery, who I used to work for, both contributed to that book. Let's see. The Comprehensive Guide to Science and Faith. This is published by Harvest House. I don't know who they are, but William Dembski contributes to this, and Casey Luskin. I've met both of them personally through the Discovery Institute. This is a really good reference to have if you're wanting more information on the science and faith or science and religion debate. Joshua Swamidas. This is a fantastic book. It's really, really interesting. We met him when he spoke at Trinity before Justin even started there.
No, I had started.
You had started? Okay.
Before you had started.
Oh, before I had started. He signed this, I think. Yeah. He signed it and then never gave me my pen back, which is fine. It was a cheap pen.
Don't get this book. Pen stealer.
Yeah, he's a pen stealer. Don't get his book. No, just kidding. It's a really interesting book. It's the opposite argument, I think, to William Lane Craig's Historical Adam. So that's a really interesting book. I would recommend it if you could get past the fact that he steals pens. Gender as Love by Felipe Dovale, or Dr. DV, as we called him at TEDS. He's an amazing professor. Really interesting views on gender and the church. The only thing I don't like about this book is look at how tiny that print is. He should have done better. But this is a good book. I recommend it. He is teaching now in the UK, I believe. This is a book that I'm slowly working through by Duns. It's Theology of Horror. I think that the horror genre is the only genre left where there is a strict good and evil. There is no gray area. There are things that are evil and there are things that are good. And he talks about how there's a lot of theological elements in very popular horror films. It's an extremely interesting book. I actually got this at SBL when we were there last year. Like I said, I'm slowly working through it, but it's a good one. And then we've got Bibles up at the top here. I guess we can talk about my desk a little bit since Justin talked about his. Right now, I am working on a lecture of early church history, so that's why you'll see a few surveys here. This is that Bruce Shelley survey that I was talking about, Church History in Plain Language. This has been in several editions, so this is the 5th. He is quite a hefty guy, but Shelley's good. He writes for like the lay person, so it's very easy to read. We talked about Gonzalez. You guys know I did a video on this volume. It's really good for a desk reference, so that's what I'm using it for now. Some Bibles, some pens. Ah, yes, the shelves.
Turn the light on.
This is cool. This is a mini library that I built. Hey, it's even got a dinosaur in it. So Justin got this for me for Christmas. It took me like a week to build, but these are all individual pieces. So that was really fun. And then down here, we've got what I call my quick grabs. So I've got some pocket church history books, a handbook of the Bible done by Zondervan. We've got a little mini Bible atlas, The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis. This is my favorite book by Michael Behe. This is The Edge of Evolution, where he talks about the evolution of malaria. And it's difficult to explain, but it's really, really cool. And he signed this for me when I met him 2 summers ago. But this is a fantastic book. I really recommend it. I also recommend his other book, Darwin's Black Box. And then here's Bu again. He's a needy dog. This is Summer for the Gods by Edward Larson. I devoured this book for my thesis that I wrote on. This is about the Scopes trial. I devoured that book for my thesis on the anti-evolution law in Arkansas, which is right here. This is my thesis.
Open it.
By Kaylin Wheaton, you guys. So that's right there. It's not quite as thick as Justin's, but it's still good. You could say it's better. We can all say it's better. So he's shaking his head in the background, but you guys can't see that. So it's better.
Okay, so now we're back to me, since we decided to go this way instead of the other way. So this is I guess that one's my shelf too. This is another one of my shelves. This is my New Testament shelf. So over there was an Old Testament. This one is New Testament. And we've got more Bibles up here. So on the top, we've got a lot of my New Testament grammars. I don't have as many, sadly, as I do for Semitic languages, but still, Greek is good too. So yeah, two in particular that I like. So the most famous grammar is Mounce's Basics of Biblical Greek. Most people use this grammar. He's very famous. It's a great grammar. I love it. The other one that I used when I was at Trinity, this is what we learned off of Dana Harris's Biblical Greek Introduction, because she was the chair of the New Testament there. This is a really good grammar. It's got a lot of good information. She is a brilliant scholar, but I prefer Mounce.
Dr. Harris is going to see this video and be like, "Et tu, Justin?"
Yeah. So I think Mounce is a little easier to understand. But I've used a lot of grammars for Greek. And then, once you get past the introduction, you've got Wallace's, who we mentioned with the papyri over there. He's got his Beyond the Basics books. And so these are just a couple of concordances that I have. And then Carl F. Henry, this is a really great book from him. Kaylin has done a lot of work. Carl F. Henry was a professor at Trinity a long time ago. He's been dead for years now. All the people I mention are dead.
He died in like the 90s.
Yeah, so he's really great. She has done a lot of work on his collection in the archives at Trinity. So she's the sole person that kept that section alive. This is a journal edition from Kesher, a journal of Messianic Judaism. This is the first thing that I ever got published. Right here. So I wrote on supersessionism, replacement theology in children's biblical literature. So yeah, this is the first thing that I ever had published. So we kept it. We'll cut this part out. All right. So on this shelf, we've got a lot of good stuff. The Zondervan Illustrated Bible Backgrounds commentary on this one is the New Testament. The reason we have the New Testament one and not the Old Testament is because we got this one for free at the library. They didn't have the Old Testament set, but I do have them on my Accordance Bible software. But I really like this set. I use it a lot. It's good for a lot of the background stuff, and it's got a lot of pictures too. Kaylin utilized the Revelation volume for her devotional series that she wrote for the church. Here is the Nidant, the New International Dictionary of New Testament Theology. Same story as this one. We've got the New Testament, not the Old Testament, because this is what was free at the library. I do have the Old Testament one on my Accordance, though. But this series is one of the best for language, for Greek, and then the Old Testament version is the best of the lexicon. I mean, it's not really a lexicon, but it kind of is in a way. But yeah, amazing. Here's some New Testament surveys that I have. Gundry, and then who's this one? Yarborough. I really like Robert Yarborough. This commentary right here, the NIV application commentary on the Bible, this came out this year. And so the NIV AC, I think NIVAC, I think is they've got commentaries on the entire Bible, Old and New Testaments, all in individual volumes. So what Zondervan decided to do is compress all of those volumes into one. So you get, one biblical commentary. So they took out a lot of information and compressed it, and also made the print really small. So overall, I like a lot of the volumes in this series, particularly the inspired and inerrant Judges Ruth commentary by Lawson Younger, 2nd edition, revised edition. But this right here, I do not like at all. I hate the compression that they did. It took out all of the good information. And so I'm not a big fan of this. However, the NIV Application Study Bible, which is somewhere around here, is really good. I do enjoy their study Bible where they utilize this information, but I hate their one-volume Bible commentary. I think if you want the NIVAC series, you just get the one on the book that you're studying. On this shelf, we've got some more surveys. Cradle, Cross, and the Crown, I really enjoyed. This was my first New Testament survey in Bible college at the King's University. And then, of course, I've got to have the D.A. Carson Introduction to the New Testament. D.A. Carson, again, professor at Trinity, one of the greats of New Testament. Here's a series from N.T. Wright. I haven't had a chance to go through these yet, but I plan on it. And then D.A. Carson has another good volume on collected writings on Scripture. So it's just got a lot of really good stuff. Anything that D.A. Carson writes is worth studying. Let's see. Here is a Greek grammar, just an older one. And then, like my Old Testament commentaries, they're primarily over there, but get the commentary for the book that you look get the author that you want to look at, not necessarily the series. And so that's what I do with a lot of these. This Revelation commentary was my professor, Lawson Younger's, when he was retiring. See, I got, when he announced that he was giving away a lot of his books, I got there a day late, and the vultures had picked his books clean.
The vultures, aka Justin's friends at school.
Yeah, my peers, my colleagues. So I got some really good stuff, but I didn't get the best stuff. I don't even know what I didn't get. So we have a Book of Common Prayer, which is really nice, especially when I do a lot of preaching. Sometimes I like to just grab one of these and find a prayer that's already been written. Or I actually have a couple other books that are somewhere where it's got prayers from the Reformation, the Puritans.
I think it's on that shelf.
So we'll talk about that when we get to it. So I have a lot of historical Jesus books, because that's a big conversation. It always is. For example, this one by Ben Witherington and others. I got a New Testament commentary over here as well, or 1 Corinthians. Here, the Kaylin will talk about it when she gets to the Veritas book, but I'll let her talk about it. But here is the Gospel of Mary of Magdala. So she'll talk about that later, but
what was her name? Karen something?
Karen King.
Yeah, Karen
King. So this is her book, and she's going to mention a book called Veritas that reacts against this. So I'll let her talk about it.
I don't know if it reacts against it, but it talks about
basically
the story of her, how she got a hold of the...
So basically, everything that she writes in this book is hogwash.
Because I'll talk about it when I get to the Veritas book.
So I also have books on, see, I don't use these shelves as much. For one, they're in hard to reach places, but also I do my ancient Near East stuff mostly. So I can't remember what's on which shelf. But down here, the Nag Hammadi library, this is all of the Gnostic writings, where you got the Gospel of Thomas and other things. This is a really great collection if you want to know what the early Gnostics believed. Before the discovery...
I'll just edit that out.
I bet it. Before the discovery of the Gnostic library, a lot of what we knew about the Gnostics we got from the reactions of church fathers like Origen. And, or maybe it was Irenaeus. Irenaeus. He wrote on heresies, right?
I believe so. Watch it be incorrect.
Anyway,
we'll just edit that out if it's incorrect.
If it's incorrect, we'll edit it out. But anyway, so that's really great if you want to know what the Gnostics believed. They were dualistic people in the early centuries of the church. I've got, more historical Jesus stuff. The Historical Jesus in Context by Amy Jill Levine, who is a really great Second Temple scholar. So Second Temple is the time of the New Testament. A lot of people still say intertestamental period. Well, actually, that would be technically before the New Testament. But that designation is becoming less popular because I think it's less accurate. and it leaves an impression of nothing happened between the two testaments. So Second Temple is a much better designation because all of this happened during when the Second Temple was standing. Here we have another Greek grammar, Introduction to Biblical Greek. This is a nice one. Here's the one, the grammar I was thinking of up there, by Decker. This is a really great Greek grammar as well. And then Mounts came out with a Greek for the rest of us. Learn Greek to study the New Testament with interlinears and Bible software. I got this because I thought it might help, but actually I didn't really like it at all. I like just get his regular grammar. And then let's see what else we got. I've got New Testament guides. Let's see. This is a really great book. So this is the first edition. I have the second edition on my Kindle. The second edition adds Dr. Eric Tully, but this textual criticism book is so good if you want to know about how textual criticism works. Brotzman and Tully. And then this Holman Hand Guide to Apologetics has been really good, and we've referenced this a lot when we need to just look up something quick on whether it's resurrection or creation or intelligent design or whatever. And then on this bottom shelf, we've got a mixture of stuff here. Another here's a Greek lexicon, a couple of Bible dictionaries, and then really these three right here on the resurrection. Gary Habermas's magnum opus, his big writing that he spent 40, 50 years studying. That is our second dog.
Yeah. Oh, look, who's creeping in?
Oh, here's Bew again. He's got to make sure that you know him. He's here. So this, On the Resurrection, is a really great set. It was actually given to me by my friend Moody. He's a fellow Old Testament scholar. He's doing his PhD at Trinity, and I'm doing mine at Ohio State. But we both met while I was at Trinity. He's fantastic scholar. He's an Egyptian scholar, and he really knows his stuff. But he gave me these. I told him I was teaching a class at our church in Chicago. I was going to go through some resurrection stuff, and he said, okay, well, have you read these? I'm going to buy them for you. And he did.
Good guy, that Moody.
Okay. This one will be difficult.
Little doggies.
So, as you can see, this is very tight. And this is really the only way we could make this room work with all of our bookshelves. I'll just quick flash of the picture of our youth at Chicago that we taught for 2 years that we really fell in love with. And we had to leave them when we moved to Ohio at our youth group at church. So this is also another hodgepodge shelf. It's got various things. So this is a really great book, Great Is Thy Faithfulness. We have a couple of copies. This one was given to us from John Woodbridge, who was Kaylin's mentor, but I also had him as a professor as well. There's contributors all from Trinity in this book. It's the history of the school. And so it's really great. I've got, of course, any study of history has to have some Bart Ehrman books. He's got some okay writings. Really here's another, his Misquoting Jesus book, which is hugely popular. But these are all written at a popular level, and his academic works are much better, I think. And he also, his writings with Bruce Metzger were really good as well, and I have some of those too. Here's one of our NA28s, our Greek New Testaments. I think they're about to come out with the 29th edition. This is NA28. We've got, this is a really great book, How the Bible Came to Be, edited by John Miller, or maybe written by John Miller.
Say John Mayer?
John Miller.
Oh, he's a
So this is a pretty good one.
multi-talented individual.
So a lot of you might be familiar with A lot of you may be familiar with James White's King James Only controversy, which is not a bad book. The first one, though, on that subject is D.A. Carson's The King James Version Debate, which is really good. James White goes into a lot more detail, but this one's really good too. Okay, so down here, I've got a lot of good works. We've got the African Bible Commentary, which I think is coming out with a second edition soon. This is just a biblical commentary from African believers. I've got another copy of Mounce's book. This one is actually Kay Lynn's copy that she used at Biola. And then we have a lot of these little pocket dictionaries. This one's pocket dictionary for Greek. We've got a Hebrew one. We've got an apologetics one, a church history one. They're just really handy to whip out. This is an Egyptian plaque that we got at the Field Museum in Chicago before we left. So another thing, we've got a lot of good, more Greek stuff, a grammar analysis of the Greek New Testament here, this little pocket edition. Bruce Metzger's, we actually have two of these, we should get rid of one. Bruce Metzger's textual commentary on the New Testament. Looks like this is the first edition, this one's the second edition. And then back here we've got Michael Brown's 5-volume work on answering Jewish objections to Jesus. Down here are a lot of my New Testament commentaries and others on canon or also language stuff. Let's see. Yeah, I got another NA 28 here, and then this, I think, oh, this is just a dictionary, Greek dictionary. And then got some Jewish writings here. This one's on the Jewish body, and this one's on Maimonides. Down here is my, I don't really know what I call this shelf. Prayer shelf, I guess. This has a lot of what's called Sidurs, which is a Jewish prayer book. And these are beautiful. For example, here's the Koran Sidur. These contain prayers that Jews would say on Sabbath or on Yom Kippur or Hanukkah or whatever. So I've got a number of these. And actually, I've got two in particular that I will mention. I've got two right here. They're really nice. I've got Sephardic and Ashkenazi versions as well. Those are two of the two Jewish ethnicities. I guess I really don't know what to...
Distinctions?
I want to say ethnicities. Ashkenazi Jews came from Eastern Europe. Sephardic Jews came from Middle East. Although there's a lot of mixing and a lot of history there. But basically, that's how you can think of it. We've got some stuff on biblical demonology. I've got a modern Hebrew dictionary. Fox's Book of Martyrs is a really good work. Sean McDowell wrote an updated version of that with his dissertation on what happened to the martyrs, but Fox's came first. And then down here, just some more Bible dictionaries and other things. I can't even get down there to show you, so we won't.
It's like 7, and for whatever reason, I just can't bear to part with it, so it lives on that monitor there. Okay. So like Justin said, it is very difficult to get back here. So we're just going to pull out things that are interesting. This is primarily science and religion stuff. I'm trying to think of like what would be worth pulling out for you. Moreland, Myers, Shaw, Ganger, and Grudem on theistic evolution. This is a very extensive work on what theistic evolution is. Arguments for, arguments against. It's thick. This is not one you'd read cover to cover, but it is a really important work to, I think, familiarize yourself with if you are in any way going to be involved in the evolution debate. Let's see here. This is a really cool volume. So this, when I was in Cambridge, I think I paid 4 pence for that. Is that right? Pence?
If that's what it cost, I don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah,
you don't know.
Pence is what the...
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
It's what, like $1.
So this is C.S. Lewis's Reflections on the Psalms. Some really cool little things that he says in here, but it's very old. So I picked it up. It was published in 1958. So picked that up. Let's see. Let's move on to the second shelf here. We've got a facsimile of Origin of Species. So as you can see here, it has that kind of old print. It's because it's essentially a photocopy of the original. So facsimiles are, they make no changes. They just photocopy it for republication. So it's a facsimile of the first edition of Darwin's Origin of Species. This is Clay Jones's Why Does God Allow Evil? I had to read this while I was at Biola. I think it's a really great book on juggling with why God allows evil to take place. I think it's absolutely worth reading. So I recommend picking that up. This is by, what's his first name? Dr. Klopper's first name?
Look at the bottom. Marty.
Oh, Martin. Everybody calls him Marty. I didn't want to go, this is by Marty Klopper. So this is his work on French Protestantism. He was a professor at TED's, good friend of Justin's.
We went to Israel together.
Yeah, they went to Israel together. So this is his book. So plug for Dr. Klopper's book there on French Protestantism. I still didn't say it right. I even said it slow. So these two books are interesting little tidbits on the shelf here. So For the Thrill of It and Trial of the Century. Trial of the Century is about the Scopes trial. As you can imagine, I referenced this for my thesis. But then also, because Charles Darrow defended evolution or Scopes teaching evolution in school, he was very famous at the time because of the Leopold and Loeb trial out of Chicago. So I read a book on that as well. So that is in here. It really tells you a lot about Darrow as a lawyer and as an atheist. We've got Undeniable by the engineer Bill Nye, who is the Playboy for evolution.
Bachelor's.
I'm sorry. He's a bachelor's degree. I'm not saying that only having a bachelor's doesn't in any way make you inferior, less intelligent, more knowledgeable on a subject.
But he's not a specialist.
But he has no business being a expert or anything of that sort on evolution. And he just rips Christians apart in this book. There's a lot of nonsense in here, to be honest. As you guys can see, I had a lot of thoughts when I was reading it. I think it's worth reading purely because it tells you a lot about what I would say is the popular consensus of pro-evolution people on Christians, but it's a lot of nonsense in there. Let's see.
She won't tell you this, but she got that award for making the best Bible study of the year at one of our old churches in Chicago.
It's fine. But I do keep it.
She made that Bible study on Ruth.
Yes, I did. This is William Lane Craig's book on the historical Adam, like I was talking about. It's a different perspective from Joshua Swamidas's genealogical Adam and Eve. He made quite a few waves with this book. I'll be honest with you, I have not read it in its entirety. I have skimmed through it. William Lane Craig was one of my professors at Biola. I really respect him in his position, but I haven't gotten a chance to read through this. But he made quite a splash, and not necessarily in a positive way, with that book. Going down, we have a set on Martin Luther's sermons, very similar to Spurgeon. This is that book Veritas that Justin was talking about. So this is written by a journalist covering I would call it a spectacle on Karen King and the discovery of the gospel of Jesus' wife. So long story short, it was found to be a complete and utter fake. Now, she made a big deal about this fragment. I mean, she claimed to have had it examined and all these things, but the examining, which you find with Veritas, is the way she had it examined. It was examined from biased people, and they ignored a lot of red flags. She presented on this at conferences, and then it came out that she was 100% wrong. The fragment was not legitimate. It was made by a con man, as the title says. But she still teaches at Harvard somehow, even though her big discovery was a complete and utter lie. So that's interesting. It's a great book. It tells you a lot. He does a really good job giving you a consensus of what happened there. We've got several volumes on, or several surveys on Christian theology. This is Michael Behe's other book, Darwin's Black Box. Really great book. I recommend that one. Let's see here. Going on to the next shelf. This is a lot of science and religion books. We've got another 4 views on creation, evolution, intelligent design. Really great book if you want like an overhead view of the debates. Here's another one of those, 2 views on women in ministry, all published by Zondervan. This is interesting. So this was recommended for us to get by Dr. Woodbridge. It's a disputation on Holy Scripture against the Papists or the Catholics, especially Bellarmine and Stapleton. So this talks about, this is essentially apologetics to Catholics against things like what would be considered idolatry, worship of the saints, that kind of thing. This is a great thing to reference for that. It's a thick boy, as they say. And then down here, we've got Schaeffer's volumes on systematic theology, the second volume of that church history survey that I have on my desk, and then just some philosophy books, some Plato and whatnot. So we've got a lot of different books. One thing that I think is really important to point out is that this library did not happen overnight. I know that, especially myself, when I see people that have big libraries, some people might consider this big, some people might consider this small. It really depends on what your library looks like. They think, wow, like how do they have all this money? How do they have all this time to accumulate this book? This is like a decade of collecting books. When we first got married, we had one bookcase that wasn't even completely full. Now this, as he said, is not all of our books. We have some fiction works, things like that in other parts of our house. But this is a collection that we've been cultivating for a very, very, very long time. So don't feel like your library has to look like this, because it does not. It does not have to be nearly this big.
A lot of the books we got for free.
Yes, that's another important thing. We picked a lot of these books up for free or for next to nothing from like libraries selling books for donations. We were gifted several books from professors and friends and colleagues. So we did not buy a good chunk, actually, of these books. They were gifted or very inexpensive. But I guess one thing that we can both answer is the types of books we think that you, as a Christian, probably need to have in your library. So since the camera is on me right now, I'll go first. I think you need one good theology survey. Grudem's fine. So one good theology survey of some kind so you can understand doctrines, theological concepts. I think you need a decent church history survey. So Shelley's fine if you want a more lay-friendly version. The 2 volumes by Justo Gonzalez is great too. I also think, like Justin said, you need to start kind of looking through commentaries. If you don't want to own commentaries, you can check them out from libraries. But a decent commentary set that you've accumulated over time, and probably, your Bible, I guess. I can't think of another type of book you should have. An atlas, and a Bible dictionary. I think those are the other 2 that you should have. What do you think, Justin?
I would say you need a church history survey, and I think Bruce Shelley's is good because it's 1 volume. You definitely need an atlas. Don't settle with the maps in the back of the Bible because you're never going to look at them. And a lot of them are good, but they're not great. So get a Bible atlas. Learn where these places are, who these people were, who these tribes were, what's going on in the land, where even is the land at. Because as I tell people, these are real stories of real people doing real things. So learn about the land. And the Bible becomes more enriched when you do that. I make sure to bring that out when I preach. You need to start, if you want to be serious in Bible study, start collecting commentaries. I mean, personally, I stay away from the ones like Enduring Word that people talk about all the time, and they only do that because it's free. But learn who these scholars are and who have done all the work, who've done all the background, who can read the language, and start collecting commentaries one at a time by some of these scholars. And then I think for Old Testament, you need a survey. And, the Old Testament survey over there by Walton, Hill and Walton down there, they're on their 5th edition now, maybe. That one's pretty good. I've taught out of that one. And then for New Testament, you need a New Testament survey. Cradle, Cross, and Crown is good. This one would be a very good one because it's Doug Moo and D.A. Carson. So I would just stick with that one. A lot of these you can find at Half Price Books or Hastings. That went out of business.
Second
and Charles. That's what I was thinking of. But yeah. So, and then get original textbooks. The Context of Scripture, 4 volumes, is going to be very pricey, and I wouldn't do that unless you really want to invest in it. But Pritchard's Ancient Near Eastern Texts, Annette, is the other one I would go. It's like $30 on Amazon. So, and then for New Testament, get primary language works, translations of these primary texts. So that's what I would recommend.
Well, we hope you guys enjoyed this. This is certainly longer than the one that I had filmed previously, which is fine. We like longer videos too. But we really wanted to give you guys an idea of what we have in here, what we use, what you might find useful, for your own study. So we hope that you enjoyed this. If you have any questions or if you want any specific recommendations on something that you're doing or studying, be sure to comment below. Let us know some resources that you really like as well. We're always looking to add good things to this library. So if you have any good recommendations, definitely let us know.
Just one last thing I wanted to say that I just thought about. I am a big advocate of language. Not everyone is gifted in the languages, but there's so many resources out there to where people can start to learn the Hebrew and the Greek. If you, instead of binging, Stranger Things season when it comes out, read through Mounce's Greek grammar or through Van Pelt and Pratico's Hebrew grammar. You can do these things, but also even better, go to a seminary. Seminaries right now are dying all across the country because there's the enrollment numbers are so low partly because of culture, but also, because of atheistic culture, but also because of culture in the church where people think it's no longer necessary to go to seminary. You don't want to just learn from all some Greek professor. I let the Holy Spirit teach me everything I need to know. I don't need some man's interpretation. You hear that a lot. Just watch any YouTube video on this subject. And while obviously the Holy Spirit is primary, that is such a bad view to have because these are mature Christians who have spent their life's work learning these things. And guess what? When you read a translation of the Bible, you're getting man's interpretation because it's interpretation on what the Hebrew and Greek words mean when you put them into English. When you read your commentary in your study Bibles, that's some Greek professor or some Hebrew professor writing those down. So you're learning from these people anyway. So I'm a big advocate of going to seminary, and seminaries are dying in favor of schools that are destroying our kids' faiths. These state-sponsored public schools.
All right. So on that note, we hope you guys enjoyed everything. If you could, please like and subscribe to this video. Like I told you guys before, I think of this like a church like connect card. Lets me know you're here. Lets me know that this is something that you're enjoying, that you'd like to keep seeing. I echo what Justin said. You know, education is super important. As a Christian, you need to be up to date and know what's going on. So if you have any questions about seminary, if you have any questions about classes or professors, let us know. But we're so glad that you're here. We hope that you have a blessed rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.